say, I am an employee of the water department. I believe that the city is doing something. But he can't say, I am speaking on behalf of the city to tell you that the city water department is doing something. That's why the use of disclaimers is an attempt to clarify, based on the law that as it exists now, this is the best way we can see to try to make that distinction clear. So it is a very murky area.
Right. So if they use a disclaimer and then, or let's say they don't use a disclaimer, then I think they've set themselves up for some possible disciplinary action, maybe termination. But if they say something that the city also believes is disruptive, and they did use a disclaimer, it seems like, they're damned either way.
Well,
I guess it just seems like this is just a minefield of, where it just seems like we're just setting ourselves up for some, a lot of legal action.
I think you're in worse trouble if you don't have the policy. Right now, the law is very unsettled and unclear. Should a lawsuit arise, and should this policy come up, the answer is the city has thought about this. We've made our best efforts to address all of these competing requirements of what has to be kept and what control can be issued, and we've tried to control only official city posts and to make clear that someone who's posting outside of an official capacity has made clear that they're posting outside the official capacity. This was our best effort. It is not perfect. I do not have answers. The First Amendment is very difficult and very fact-specific.
On paragraph G, page 55.
What section is that?
5. Guidance for appointed and elected official participation in social networking. It says stop discussing issues if asked to do so by the city. And, I think it would be wise to put possibly city attorney, because who is the city? Is that city administrator? Is that a department director? It just seems like...
You're looking for someone in particular to make the recommendation for the
Well, I think it should be
elected
specific, yeah. Otherwise, who is the city? Anybody that calls with a city phone number? I don't know, maybe that's being too picky, but again, it just
It
seems
could be
like...
the city attorney, it could be the city administrator, it could be your HR director. This is limited to specific, if you're doing something that would violate the law or violate confidentiality, or if you're doing something that could waive a privilege in the case of litigation, those are things that the city has some ability to keep confidential under both COMA and CORA, Open Meetings Act, Open Records Act. And so the city should be able to protect that information, including by asking someone who has access to it through their employment or position with the city. But I think you're right, it needs to come from someone who is recognized as authoritative. I don't know that it needs to be in a vote of the city council. I think you could designate someone.
Right, and I suggest the city attorney. I would think that would be a little more precise. And if I get a call from the city attorney, I'm more likely to stop than if I get a call from the HR manager, you know what I'm saying?
And that's true, but certainly for an employee, the HR manager might also be effective, so you might designate more than one person.
How about something along the lines of the city attorney, city administrator, or their designee? People go on vacation. People like the city attorney don't work for us full time. They have court schedules and vacations to Mexico and things like that. So I'd like to broaden it a little bit and yeah, just to provide a little.
I think the problem here is there's a chain of command issue where the city administrator shouldn't be expected to tell an elected official that's above, not solely in that capacity, but certainly as a group above them, tell them to stop using the social media or stop being disruptive, for instance. I just think it'd be better to have advice from somebody that is somewhat impartial. And
I hear what you're saying, and for the elected officials, that does make sense. but I'm not sure that you want to require to bring in the city attorney if it's an employee,
Oh, no,
a smaller issue.
I would agree with that, because, yeah, no, I would agree with that, but I thought,
Subsection G is actually specifically referring to Section 5, which is guidance for appointed elected officials.
You're right, I'm sorry.
So it wouldn't have anything to do with...
We've been talking about Section 4 as well as Section 5, but yes.
And
Well, it could have something for personnel. I mean, if I call Mary because a city employee calls me and she tells me, hey, listen, don't talk about this, this is not, whatever it's being handled, then if I don't take that advice and something happens, then I'm personally, I mean, to me, this is kind of like common sense. And if I choose not to listen to Cheryl, if she says something's under litigation, and I choose to go out there and post it, then that's my own personal life. I mean, it just...
And I don't dispute that. What I'm saying is that subsection G, which is what Larry's been referring to, speaks specifically to appointed and elected officials' participation in social media.
And you're correct, that this section is limited.
And that's what I was mentioning. I understand there could be employment or employee issues that are discussed, but in this case, it's specifically to elected and appointed officials only.
yeah.
But it's us commenting on those particular issues.
That is correct. In a particular city issue, which could include employees, employment, or litigation, referring to a whole host of issues, including material liability, which could be, policy. I mean, it's not just employment. I understand what you're saying, but from the standpoint of who this affects, it affects us.
And honestly, I think that if we can't take a recommendation from our city administrator, the top non-elected official involved in city government, to maybe cool our jets for a minute, then we probably don't have the right city administrator in place.
I mean, we've been told by the city administrator to disband the EUB, and there's, 3 holdouts that refuse to do that, so.
I know, we're talking
And
about
you-
social media policy.
Well, I'm just saying, that you gotta, you gotta plan for what could happen, and I'm telling you, she's given us great advice, and 3 people on this council have chosen not to accept it, and then you've actually gone off in a different direction with DPU, but,
Actually, the city attorney gave us advice as well, and we didn't follow that either, so, if we wanna go down that road, then we're going to be getting way off of new business item number.
well, the city is too broad a term, I'm sorry, that.
Well, which is
and
why I
city attorney-
suggested city attorney and city administrator.
Well, again, the city administrator is,
Tori, how do you feel about city attorney and city administrator?
I'm fine with that, and then you also said, or they're a designate.
Or their
that's
designee?
every,
Well, but if.
No,
it could be,
It's a
no.
specific
Keith,
delegate
Right.
position.
how do you feel about that?
I actually think it should just be the city administrator or the delegate, or Mary's office. The city attorney is the same situation, they work for us. It's the same employee, contractor, it's the same relationship. So, and actually, I don't think the city attorney's role is to reach out to a certain individual on the council, say so. So I think it's actually should be the city administrator and Mary's office, actually.
Okay, so could we say city administrator or designee?
That's what I would prefer.
Tori, you
I'd be
okay
okay
with that?
No problem.
Christine?
You make a good point, Keith, yeah. I would be more comfortable with the administrator making that call.
Okay. Is it all right if we move on?
that's fine, but let me just say this, there have been times in our recent past where we had a strong-willed city administrator, a strong-willed mayor, and some weak council members who, if they got told by a city administrator who was under direct authority of the mayor to do something or not to do something, they would do it. And I guess I would question the wisdom of listening to someone that is not an impartial, person in that discussion.
Duly noted. Any other questions, Steve, Christie, Tori, Keith?
Okay.
I actually did have a real quick question
Certainly.
concerning Section 5, and have really more to do with, there's several of us on the council that have been heavily involved in social media in the past, before our term as council members, as well as, some of us during our term. And